All right, this is part two of the early Romantic period, referencing to chapter 9 of Music for the Listener for our class, Music 100 at BCTC. And we got through a bulk of composers' last lecture or last part, including Nikolai Paganini, Franz Schubert, Chopin, Felix Mendelssohn, and his sister Fanny Mendelssohn. This lecture we're going to focus on Hector Berlioz, Robert Schumann and his wife Clara Schumann, and Franz Liszt as the second half of this one, and hopefully it won't be as long. But reminder that we're looking at the Romantic at this. We're stressing the emotion and the pushing the limits of expression in favor of form. Okay, the time of the classicism of Mozart and Haydn, it was all about form and balance, and this is about taking those forms and pushing on them. Beethoven led the charge, and as time goes on, it's pushed further and further. So Hector Berlioz, who's highlighted in the chapter on the right side as you scroll down, is a French composer from 1803 to 1869, and he's noted for writing a lot of programmatic music. So, programmatic music is instrumental music that doesn't have any words to it but tells a story. And very notable is his Symphonie Fantastique and his this here is used as the idée fixe, and I'll have a explanation of that in real soon. You'll see what that means. But his program symphony is about a young musician who takes a basically a symphonic trip. He takes opium. The composer does, or the narrative is about an artist taking opium due to being in love and despair. He finds this person that he's in love, his ideal love, and it doesn't work out. There's a movement about falling in love. There's a ball. There's a scene in the country, and then being high on opium, the composer or the artist, the fictional character of this symphony. He kills his beloved, and then he's marched to the scaffold to be beheaded, which was the preferred form of execution for the French during this time period. And then there's a fifth movement, which is an epilogue. It's about the artist going to hell for his crimes committed, the Dreams of the Wishes Sabbath. And here are some highlights I've got. And I've got these links active in the next window. Here's the biography document about Hector Berlioz. Initially studied medicine, but was much more interested in music. He spent time at the Paris Opera and absorbed a lot of Gluck's opera. That's another composer of note, but not enough to be mentioned in the class, really, beyond footnote. He wins the composed a great prize in Paris for his compositional output as a young man as well. And this is Leonard Bernstein talking a little bit in front of the New York Philharmonic about Berlioz in this piece.
Because those sounds you're hearing come from the first psychedelic symphony in history, the first musical description ever made of a trip, written 130 odd years before the Beatles, way back in 1830 by the brilliant French composer Hector Berlioz. That's Berlioz, the Z is pronounced. He called it Symphonie Fantastique, or Fantastic Symphony, and fantastic it is in every sense of the word, including psychedelic. And that's not just my own idea, it's a fact, because Berlioz himself tells us so. Just listen to these first two sentences of his own program note that he wrote describing the symphony. Quote, "A young musician of a morbidly sensitive nature and a feverish imagination poisons himself with opium in a fit of lovesick despair. The narcotic dose, too weak to cause death, plunges him into a heavy sleep accompanied by the strangest visions, during which his feelings, sensations, and memories are translated by his sick brain into musical thoughts and images." Unquote. Doesn't sound very different from modern days, does it? And we have every reason to suspect that the morbid young musician Berlioz is talking about is none other than Hector himself. He certainly did have fits of lovesick despair, we're told, and he was a creature of wild imagination, wild enough to have these visions and fantasies without taking a dose of anything. His opium was simply his genius, which could transform these grotesque fantasies into music. Now listen to the next sentence of that same program note. Quote, "Even the beloved one herself, the one who's made him lovesick, has become for him a melody, like a fixed idea which he hears everywhere, always returning." Unquote. A fixed idea, remember that. In French, idée fixe. In other words, an obsession. You all know what an obsession is. It's something that takes hold of your mind and won't let go. Well, in this symphony, the obsession is Berlioz's beloved, she who has made him so desperately lovesick. She haunts the symphony. Wherever the music goes, she keeps intruding, interrupting, returning in endless forms and shapes.
Here's a clip of that idée fixe.
Even the beloved one herself, the one who's made him lovesick, has become for him a melody, like a fixed idea which he hears
Skip it.
interrupting.
Sorry about that.
Melody, the first phrase of it.
Here it is.
That's the first phrase. Can you hear the lovesick yearning in that melody? The way it has a rising shape at the beginning, and then rising even higher, straining still further, and then even further, and then hopelessly collapsing. Isn't that a perfect musical picture of lovesick longing? Now listen to it again, this time letting it continue into its second phrase, and then its third, fourth, and so on, each time rising and straining further and further, and each time again falling back into despair. Now, I'm sure that any of you who has ever had a crush on someone who didn't return your feeling will understand that passionate melody perfectly, and you can easily see how a lovesick musician could become obsessed by it.
All right, so apologize for that. That's the theme of the beloved in Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique. Symphonie Fantastique is a very large-scale work. It uses a giant orchestra. It's a piece that he wrote while he was at the Paris Conservatory, and he himself was smitten with love for this English actress. She was a Shakespearean actress, so acted in Shakespeare's plays, which were in vogue at the time. And Harriet Smithson was her name. And he doesn't know her. They don't know each other, but he writes this piece kind of about her. Later on, they do meet whenever her career is kind of gone down and he is on the rise. And they get married. And from what is written about it, it wasn't a very happy marriage. So there you go. On the Spotify playlist, we have the entirety of the Symphonie Fantastique by Hector Berlioz.
Taco Bell's Nachos Party Pack
And
always brings the
sorry
fun.
for
Game
that.
day is now. Game day with Nachos. Turn that monthly book club into a monthly book.
Sorry for that. There's another commercial for a second. So it's a 5-movement symphony, and there's basically the kind of a metal scene, and then they're falling in love, and then there's a dance, and it's the second movement. It's in 3, and then we've got the march to the scaffold at the end. So let me turn my volume back up so you can hear it. Here's that D-Day effects. Also large scale form. It's a 16-minute movement for the first movement. Then we got movement 2. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's a bit of movement 3. This instrument playing is like an oboe, but it's a little bit longer. It's called the English horn, but it's actually a bad translation of the French into English, so we got that name. It actually means angle horn, but there's movement 4, which is a march. It's the march to the scaffold after he's done the unthinkable and killed his beloved. You got the sound of the artillery, the snare drum coming off in the background, bass drum, big brass section, which would have been used for military marches. Before the end of this movement, that Idée Fixe shows up. It's played right before he's beheaded, right here. Here's the dropping of the guillotine. Movement 4 is after he's passed away to the hell, so to speak. It's a very eerie sounding movement. And it also quotes the Requiem Mass. It's got the Dies Irae playing. And if I can find that, I want to play that for you. Twisted sounding melodies and so forth. Here it is. So the Dies Irae was a Middle Ages chant. So think monks and religious. It's twisted because this is kind of like being played from the other world. There it is. Ire Dominus Die Ire. There it is, another instrument group. So that's definitely an example of a programmed symphony. Next composer that we're going to look at is Robert Schumann from 1810 to 1855, pianist, composer, and music critic. He marries as a junior, actually one of his teachers' daughters, Clara Velk it was, turned Clara Schumann. She lived from 1819 to 1896. They had 7 children. Robert Schumann actually passes away from syphilis and madness in a sanitarium. And it should say 7 children, not 4 children. I'll go ahead and fix that right now. Um, it wasn't. It was very much the idea that the wife would support the husband in his career and pursuits and so forth during the 1800s. Even though we have liberation of a lot of folks, better living conditions for some, women are still second in their household. But after Robert passes away, in order to support her husband, support her children, she goes back on the road as a touring concert pianist. And she's a composer of note, though she doesn't. She puts her career on the side so that her husband's can flourish. All right. So up here, there's a synopsis of Robert and Clara Schumann, and I like how our author talks about how it could be a plot of a movie theme. Please take a read of this. That they met when he was 23 and she was 14. And yeah, that'll give you an idea of the man and the woman. If you know the narrative of who these people are, a lot of times their music starts to make a lot more sense. I'm sorry that I'm scrolling down, but read the chapter and check out what you can learn about these composers. Here we are with the NPR article, National Public Radio, talking about the life of Robert Schumann and his music. I encourage you to read this article. This is pinpointed in the lecture slides. And within the Spotify playlist, we have some examples of Schumann's music. And he's noted. He's part of this clique with Mendelssohn. They're all friends, and they talk about the music of Bach and older composers. They're part of this Bach society that they found. Schumann starts out in law school, but doesn't like it, and is drawn to music and literature. And he founds a music critic journal that's still in publication to this day. And here's a little snippet of some of Robert Schumann's piano music. Like Schubert, writes Lieder. He writes piano works that are very lyrical, and he composes a total of 4 symphonies. Carnival. Being a piano soloist, he would have been out performing this, as would his wife. To her dying day, Clara Schumann was a champion of her passed on husband's music and performed it widely. And Schumann's symphonies are part of the regular repertoire as well. And we've got here an article about Clara Schumann that I encourage you to take a read of. So let's move on now to Franz Liszt, who is probably the most avant-garde of the composers, the Romantic era epoch. So he's Hungarian. He's a father. His father was a musician at Esterházy, that same court where Haydn functioned. Family moves to Vienna for Liszt to study with the famous Antonio Salieri, who also taught Beethoven and Schubert. Tours Europe at the age of 13 as a piano virtuoso, and at this time, at 20, he hears Paganini. And a reminder, Paganini, the fiery violinist who claimed to be in league with the devil, as a player to promote himself for tickets. Liszt does the same thing. He has a fiery personality as a pianist, and he kind of promotes the same legend. Has a couple of lurid affairs with different women throughout his life, and doesn't end up ever actually marrying. And in spite of this picture here of him as an old man, as a younger person, he's considered to be quite attractive. And there's a synopsis of Liszt here as well. There's a portrait of Liszt as a younger man, and please read this. Knowing a bit about the man helps you know more about the compositions. And he writes 2 piano concertos. He transcribes 56 of Schubert's songs to perform on the piano. And here's another term for you: transcription. Transcribe means when you take music of one genre and put it to another. So Schubert's songs for voice and piano, Liszt takes them and puts the voice part in the piano and does it all himself. He also does transcriptions of operas and excerpts from Mozart, Donizetti, Rossini, Bellini, Verdi. He takes opera scores and puts it all on the piano as well. That's a transcription, where you take it from one medium and put it in another. Transcribes Beethoven symphonies and plays it on the piano. So he's a pianist and a touring musician. He also writes for the orchestra. And this is critical. While he was very much a ladies' man, maybe womanizer as a young man, towards the end of his life, he takes I think it's 5 of the 7 orders to become a priest, and he's very religious and vowed. In this last image of him, he is wearing a cleric's collar there. So religious music, especially towards the end of his life, is very important. He writes a Requiem Mass, Hungarian Coronation Mass, these sacred works right here that are also listed. And here's a snippet of some of Franz Liszt piano music. And again, think Paganini, that virtuoso, very hard to play. His Transcendental Etude number 8. I'll let this play out. Again, the most avant-garde composer in the mid-Romantic period, Wagner, who's an opera composer we'll look at, is also avant-garde. Avant-garde meaning cutting edge of change, the most scary, out there, new stuff. He's takes on different roles towards the end of his life. In 1842, he becomes the music director in Weimar, Germany. He tires of touring in his mid-30s and moves on. He's a friend of Berlioz and Chopin. Most of these composers and artists, they knew each other and knew of each other, at least throughout Central Europe and Western Europe. So I've got a Wikipedia link here. Click on that. Give that a read if you need to. This idea of transcription you need to know. Okay. That is it for this one.